Please now generate the motivation of bodhicitta, the mindset on supreme awakening, thinking, I will establish, or in order to establish, all mother sentient beings, luminous in number as the vast expanse of space, at the level of perfect, complete, unsurpassable enlightenment. I will now listen to this explanation of the Vajrasattva practice and apply that to myself. So, thinking like that, please rouse the mind of bodhicitta.
thing is that the review them, so basically,
Kerim Zinchida's over Matene. Sugar didn't much is it chocolate? Didn't Shirik Dojin. So, yesterday I bestowed the Vajrasattva empowerment, and today I am teaching giving instructions on the Vajrasattva practice, the same practice for which I gave the empowerment yesterday. The very fact that you requested me to first give the empowerment for this practice and then to teach on it just reflects the fact that you are students of an excellent teacher and you sort of know how things should be done, that before engaging in a tantric practice one needs empowerment, but that also one needs instructions in order to know how to practice properly. In the Tibetan tradition we call empowerment that which ripens, or ripening empowerment, and then the supportive instructions are described as liberating instructions. So we have ripening empowerment and liberating instructions. Generally, regarding the liberating instructions, generally speaking, traditionally, one doesn't really give practice instructions sort of based on a specific liturgy. Generally, what's done is the ripening empowerment will be given for specific practices, but in terms of educating the students as to how to engage in those given practices, well, a teacher won't kind of go through each sadhana individually and explain, line by line or practice by practice, how it should be done. Rather, there are more general sort of overview texts that are not related to any specific sadhana, but are related to sadhana practice or sort of deity practice in general, and give one a very detailed and extensive understanding of the framework of such practices. So what sort of texts are we talking about? Longchenpa's commentary on the Guhyagarbha Tantra, entitled Dispelling the Darkness of the 10 Directions. This extensive commentary really gives one a complete, detailed overview of the framework of sadhana practice and also sort of what its foundation is, really from A to Z, top to bottom. Similarly, there are texts known as overviews of, we could say, notes on generation stage practice, in Tibetan Kerim Zintri, and some specific kind of, this is a type of text, Kerim Zintri, notes on generation stage practice, and there's some specific texts which are very well known and highly praised because they really give one an extensive just to repeat, a very extensive, detailed understanding or explanation, and therefore understanding of how ritual practices are structured, how they work. So beginning from the very first part of the ritual where one sprinkles cleansing water on the offerings and so on, all the way through the different stages of the practice to the dedication of merit, aspirations and prayers for auspiciousness. If you study those texts, those more general texts, you can gain a really grounded and thorough understanding of what sadhana practice and the various liturgies and rituals are all about. And then you can apply that understanding to any given sadhana, and there's no need then to receive further instructions on, this Vajrasattva sadhana, this Vajrakalaya sadhana, and so on and so forth. Just to mention a few specific texts that are very worth looking at. Jigme Lingpa's notes on the generation stage entitled Staircase to Akanishta, which is translated in English. A text by Dujom Lingpa called The Sharp Vajra of Awareness, and other notes for and other such texts. Later on we can prepare a list of some texts in this category that are available in English. These days, though, so this is, just to reiterate, this is how things are done generally in the Tibetan tradition. There is, until very recently, there has been no tradition of instructing students in how to practice a specific sadhana. Generally, students would be taught or told to study these more general texts that are extremely thorough and give one a detailed survey of sadhana practice, and then the student would develop a thorough understanding and apply that understanding to any given sadhana. They wouldn't have the need to go and ask a teacher, "Oh, please teach me how to practice this specific sadhana." These days, though, people, for whatever reason, maybe people are becoming a bit lazy. They aren't bothering to do that extensive study, more general study. And instead, they just pick up a practice and then go and ask a teacher, "Oh, please teach me how to do this specific sadhana." And so now we find commentaries on teachings on specific sadhanas that really, nothing like this existed in the Tibetan tradition until a few years ago. Like you'll find teachings on, the visualization for truma, or the visualization for this Vajrasattva practice in this lineage. This is a new phenomena, so it's just good to be aware of that. It's not to say that there's anything wrong with this, it's just this isn't really the tradition, and there's a reason why it's not the tradition, because if you go about things that way, then there'll be no end to the need for explanations. Every time you do a new sadhana, you'll feel like you need to go and get new teachings. Whereas if you do things the traditional way, studying generation stage practice, sadhana practice as a whole, as a subject on its own, then you can gain an understanding of that style of practice and apply it to any given sadhana without the need to get specific instructions again. Just to say again, this really is the way things are in the tradition and always have been. Just to prove the point, for instance, look at the collected works of Jigme Lingpa or Dujom Lingpa, just to take two masters. Jigme Lingpa's collected works contain so many different sadhanas, ritual practices, but you won't find any commentaries there by Jigme Lingpa that go specifically, that teach the visualization and so on for a specific sadhana, right? Instead, what you do find is Jigme Lingpa's more general commentaries on generation stage as a mode of practice, like the text I mentioned, the ladder to Akanishta. Likewise with Dujom Lingpa, how many sadhanas are contained in Dujom Lingpa's collected works? But he didn't there aren't commentaries on, say, this Vajrakalaya practice, this Vajrasattva practice by Dujom Lingpa. Instead, you have more general teachings like the sharp Vajra of awareness and so on. So this is just to kind of inform you of generally how things are, because if you really want to gain a thorough, comprehensive understanding of generation stage practice and sadhana practice, that's the way to go about it. Study these more general, detailed texts, and develop your own understanding that you'll be able to apply to any sadhana without the need to receive specific instructions. Nasser.
Oh yeah, this is not
So this being the case, what I'll do here is give an overview of this extensive Vajrasattva sadhana, a chariot of great merit. I'm not going to go through it line by line. We don't have the time to do that. Of course, each word and each line of the liturgy is extremely precious and rich, but we won't go through each line. What I'll do is I'll go through the sadhana from beginning to end, just highlighting and giving some explanation of each section. So, yeah, each section or part of the practice. As I said yesterday and on previous days, Vajrasattva is a deity of the what we call the magical matrix, the magical matrix of the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities, and Vajrasattva is a deity who embodies all of these 100 peaceful and wrathful deities, all boundless deities. So they're all embodied in the single figure of Vajrasattva. The previous Dujun Rinpoche Jigdral Yeshe Dorje composed 4 very blessed lines of supplication to Vajrasattva, where he says, Vajrasattva is the embodiment of all gurus without exception. So this is to say Vajrasattva embodies or condenses within himself all gurus. And this is how we need to understand Vajrasattva as being in essence all of our root gurus. For instance, take myself. I have so many different teachers, so many lamas I've studied with. For instance, Dujun Rinpoche, Tongsen Nobu Rinpoche, Penno Rinpoche, Khenpo Dazer, and so on. Sorry, I'm missing out a few, quite a lot actually, but me meaning, not Rinpoche. But all of them are embodied in the deity Vajrasattva. The essence of all of my many gurus are embodied in Vajrasattva. The second line of the supplication reads, likewise all countless yidams are contained in the form of Vajrasattva. So there are so many different types of yidam deities, right? But all of them, without exception, are embodied in Vajrasattva. Thirdly, Vajrasattva, you embody and contain all dakinis. The dakinis of the three classes, the 5 families, the dakinis of all the different sacred places and lands are all contained within Vajrasattva. So to you, the embodiment of all Buddha families, sovereign Vajrasattva, I supplicate. This, because Vajrasattva embodies all gurus, all yidam deities, all dakinis, because he embodies all enlightened ones, therefore, when we practice Vajrasattva, we are practicing all deities, all gurus, all yidams, and all dakinis. Again, to use myself as an example, I've received literally thousands of different empowerments, literally thousands. If I were to try and practice the specific sadhanas for all of those specific sadhanas and deities for all of those empowerments, it would simply be impossible. There is literally not enough time in the day to even think about doing that. So how do I go about practicing? Well, I practice Vajrasattva daily. Because Vajrasattva is the essence and embodiment of all deities without exception. When I practice Vajrasattva daily, I do so using this practice we're looking at, but with a slightly shorter liturgy. There is a slightly shorter liturgy than this one, but for the very same Vajrasattva practice. So that's what I use for my daily practice. Nasu.
lama idam bhagavad idam khali tu resna position bi kudi idam thamje ne chidu de kure tu de lama thamje ge chidu de ati position bi tu ne khalo thamje ge ta thamje ge de position bi so de de kala ui idam song khalo tu lama ta sum tu de.
How are the 3 roots of the Guru, Yidam and Dakini embodied in Vajrasattva? Well, Vajrasattva's physical form, his enlightened body, is the embodiment of all Yidam deities. Vajrasattva's enlightened mind is the embodiment of all gurus, and Vajrasattva's enlightened speech is the embodiment of all dakinis. So Vajrasattva's body is all Yidam deities, his speech is all dakinis, and his mind is all gurus.
Yeah, that in the contact, Dujis about the constant took the race now. In the Dujis, I get to repeat it without consonant to Sangi or Mudish. In the Sangi, go up to the Congress now. The Tamokan is a Tanyan, but you make the tower. I need the ear made the towers man at time, I need the ear make go on to the Sangi get up to but I am the but able to do the Chavala, I can go on another shall be on that. If you want to hide, don't know, shall only one thing. Kali, Mata, now the John, in the zone that in the Tabin on the Aya shall, or any 5 number on the big thing, Rangi, very lovely number, Lama, you don't get any good woman, any Rangi, you get to pass a tower, don't I say several them, or any number of Tabar and sometimes take it in. And then I say, some of what I want to do, give them the bucket entirely. I also don't do this, but just in the community.
Why is it that we need to practice Vajrasattva, engage in this kind of practice? Well, it's because we need to manifest the state of enlightenment, right? We need to make the state of enlightenment manifest. And what is the ultimate, consummate state of enlightenment? It's the full manifestation of the inseparable truths of great purity and equality, which I talked about in detail over in the previous evenings, right? So to make this consummate state of enlightenment, the inseparable truths of great purity and equality, to make that to bring that into, to actualize that, to bring that into, to bring that reality into reality, so to speak, we need to purify all of our impure experience, our impure experience and obscurations. We do that by practicing the deity, by practicing the deity. Through that kind of practice, we're able to gradually clear away all of our misdeeds, our obscurations and habitual tendencies that obscure this reality from us. We're able to accumulate merit and to transform our impure appearances into their natural state, meaning pure appearances. And as a result, by engaging in practice, then in this kind of practice, over time we will come to realize or make manifest this inseparable great purity and equality, so that it's not something we just understand conceptually, but our actual reality, our actual experience. Not so much. Not so much. Not so much.
만족이 도시생활이 하면서 된 것도 그렇다. 도시생활이 콕 가르스나 콕스거나 싸워리 가르스나 유료 상황이 되니까 유료 상황이 뭐지 간제신 양수냐 거야. 다 유료 상황이보다 다 공시해봐래. 나라서 싸워 보이더니 가서잖아. 내가 같은 거네. 유료 상황이 뭐 뒤뒤시야. 배겨봐다 배겨요. 뒤시. 딱이 나네 para 유료 상황이 그런 거 제바이나 뭐하는 거지. 유료 주제 유튜브 주제 당연히 민간이 아무 모델에 저기서 사는 거 유튜브 주제가 나와서 용서다 따와 네 대판에 따와서 나와서 리우니 있으니까 근데 묘가 땡긴지 따와서 공부하시 라트로 쳐봐서 따와 공부하셔서 이제 다 뒤에 따와 공부하셔서 이제 더 빠진 거로 다 나와서 긴 거로 노지 생기기 시작을 했잖아요. 또 같이 나가서야 근데 또 그런 감시 긴 거로 쓰기 dumbo 긴 거로 좀 같은 마찬가지였어요. 얘기가 뭐는 되네 그래서 감시 얘기가 되네 긴 거로 있고 말 되네 알레 소설 무슨 또 뭔가 묘가 되는 다 긴 거로 긴 거로 나와 아마 죽어서 왕 왕되면 김건 나오죠. 뒤에 고민이 이 하나는 김건 왕 김건 나오는 죽었어요. 리버트 왕 하나 바라습니다. 이제 왕이 바시바리는 보험 상황에서 저 나스도 왕다. 그래서 왕 남이고 일랑세기에나 뒤도 상황이면 너무 시들에 이들은 라다니 아까는 지금은 지킨대로 시우지 직시를 마시려는 아까 한 가지 하고 그런 것으로 해서 말해서 그냥 무슨 이유는 다른 데로 이제 그런 것으로 해서 나다 왕의 왕의 상황인데 왕의 상황이 왕은 세대에 왕이 시작하는 데서 무대를 보고 왕은 하여튼 말고 왕은 근데 민다와 담측은 상하야 담측 살펴보다 담측적으로 살펴보다 담측보다 담측 맞으면 조금 남아 담측이 뭐 이게 다 말하면서 이담지 남의 이담지 나와 문제가 있는 말하고 뭔가 이담지 때문에 그 비치도 봐 뭐에 되게 되네 뭐 대고 담측에 대한 말다 시행이야 담측 정말 사회 담측 나는 연락을 담측 주고 사회 담측 정말 이게 자신 거를 내가 이제 그래서 이제 한 주주기 때문에 민다와 때려 민다와 아이는 그런 얘기 담지 얘기 담지 아 돈도 이제와 주바스 돈도 이제와 주바스 다 빠서 온수 주지 주바스 다 사건은 이제 뭐 시험 급지는 좋다가 주신도 수기도 아 주바스는 뭐죠 연발님이 주바 주신 상황이에요. 이제 이거는 하고 제가 돈도 이제와 주바스 아주 지금 다들 당연히 얘기 듣고 그래. 근데 저도 쳐봐. 준비기 전에 쳐봐. 근데 시주였으니까 자주였으니까 시주였으니까 주인 잡는 것도 그나서 지져서 시주 자주였으니까 근데 진짜 저희는 데이터 왕복만 아주 있었던 것 같은데 아들들하고 하는 것 같은데 같이 하기도 저번에 나이는 다 되는 주의적 저희는 아들들하고 지금 동생은 대인이 나왔다 왕복은 미고 왕복라서 왔다 지내네 아들들 같은 나도 대인이 다 자취했으면 자꾸 그쳐야 됐을까 되게 그렇거든요 저거 하여튼 메라토 중에서 먼저 소재 멘탈라다라서 얘들에게 나가다 예 대대적이 잡았나 대대적이 잡았다 대처받다야 무슨 저기 잡았다 얘기 좀 잡았다 근데 지나진게 예 땡땡이 잡아서 저기게 잡았다 한예가 잡아요 근데 로봇 틀리에 저것도 서지게 그러면 나만 이거에 가서 틀리고 배는 보고 싶은 그 미션을 그 단계를 가라게 미션이야 가지고 제가 나는 내가 그렇지 있으라고 나머지 그냥 나머지 샤프도 내가 취입에 나오지 있으나 이제 쳐봐야 근데 진행아 근데 진행들에서는 시와다 겨와나 잡아서 이 틀리고 애들 다들 틀리죠 이네 시와처럼 되는 내 친구가 참자다 진짜서 아무것도 그 공모수 좀 참자 참자들이야 참자는 것이라서 거예요. 예, 그 차이자는 손을 인도 등 독창센다는 레기 참가서 참가 먹어요. 대들이 참가 참가 무슨 소리 먹어요. 정말 참가. 내 뇌방아. 얘들이 하다 물을 제가 나. 근데 나도 엄마들 사도 사는 바에 맞서 사는 거 파야 주지고 뇌방아. 다 뒤죽지기 때문에 다 너는 초가지 뒤죽지를 상황. 뒤죽지게 상황은 되네. chocolate para sacar dicho que más sana ni chocolate que más de todo que tiene ya mucho pero la cala sobre de hoy na ya 참지 정도의 차지고 말로 cala 좋아하게 괜찮아 너 빈난신 제게가 알아서 지기 지다에 있는 유진 탐주 소화에 야고요 유진 또 지금 마상에 있는 딘데들인데 또 되지 않고 정말 좀 차이고 데뷔가 나게 되니까 알아서 있는 네, 비기고 쭉직이 저거 약간 되는 상상들 거지. 이제 창고들 예리인데 로그 내리는 이거 뭐 상황이야. 약고제 하야고 지금 거기 말아서 되네. 저거 약고 당시에 가지고 이 창이라 됐어. 이게 아까 상당히 저거 약고제 같은 창들 다다다다 내만 저거 줘요. 시도. 뭐만 저거 되게 뺏어지고 있다. 빼졌다 이거 뭐 정신이 그래서 그냥 인지적으로 나 스텝이 지금 나는 소리지. 지금 처음에 너무 미스. 뭔지 너무 나랑 게임인데 배쳐가는 나한테 더도 되네. 처음에 이제 이거가 처음에 전자적인 말이야. 처음에 더 나서고 쉬어요. 처음에 다른 사람이 뭔지 알면 유튜브 주지 하는데 상관. 뭐만 나 처음에 당긴 또 지금 이쪽으로 나는 너 맞아. 또 이거 이제 자산으로 저 탐지 좀 공부할 때 나와는 것다. 얘네가 사람들이 나한테는 뭐 용기가 난 잘못인데 우리 나라도 쉬우 주고 지금 근데 쉬우 시행이에요. 나랑 지금 장을 시작했잖아. 이마지 좀 다들 나라서 나도 보면 무슨 사례 시험을 무슨 나서 무슨 다 미닝도 당연히 또 제일 카로케를 시작해 최소한 때는 카로케에서 보면 무슨 사례 하버드 유로 상황이 무슨 사례예요. 이게 가운데 유로 상황이 뭐게 담들라 그냥 하다 자기가 제기면 생각제 제사요. 이제가 초가 약속 상황이라서 이것도 체중이나 체중이나 당고에서 아버지 가서 드디 인터스 내가 만들어라고 이 초가 만들고요. 그러다가 이게 하나 지금 초가 당기 그 지서로 더블 메이킹도 같이 만들어라고 그래. 나만 별별 아주 저거를 우리 주시지 또 나는 초가 이 개를 우리 나한테서 왜냐 초가지 상황이 났어. 그래서 제가 상황이 난다. 지금 이제 이거 당하는 건 초가지 당사를 지금 권이 곧장분이 죽다시만 봐도 죽고 상대가 됐어. 이게 상황인 것을 딱 빼내시고 로마고 초가지 이제 나는 염류당 집이고 지금 맞은 더시가 있는데 죽이고 저 장대에 상인의 담치를 뛰어야 돼서 이게 그 상황인 그 담치를 쓰긴 되네. 양보다 많은 게 저서 상황 중소적 상황인 게 윤냐면 저거 상황이 정말 상인의 담치 세주된 영향이 있나요? 근데 균등 오주도 상도 균등 오주도 상도 단축된 데로 이게 때니 나는 다음에 아주 균기 단축이 배가 나왔다. 다 대나서요. 기능서 무슨 나는 다 초과하는 아주 균등 오주지 영향이 지난 거니. 그러니까 초과하는 나 인터넷에 초과도 나는 뭐 약국이 초과도 줘야 약국이 하고 지금 나에게 상담 하는 사람이 자 이게 다 소원하고 진짜 야 라마 힘들지는 막 뭐니 이게 저거야 무슨 땀 러시아 반주 초과도 용수 보고 곰 나는 곰이 약국이 그래서 뒤도 뒤는 순주다 내가 초과 받는 게 좀 쌤 쪼다 아우다 유튜브 상황이 보다 나는 네 베스트 알아 다시 유튜브 상황이 보다 배터리 미래 먹고 시 미가 거기에 아니 무슨 상황이 뭐냐 내지 초과야 땀 나버다 땀이나 근데 하고도 다 대처가 까마가 들만은 까마서 따라가서 유튜브 저한테 이어서 낸다 나눠서 이 갈게라서 같은데 이어 때문에 주다 나눠서 디테일 이어서 다시 이렇게 감도 그라서 디지털 내가 이어서 그래서 간단하게 하고도 이미 저가 때문에 따리 비디오 직접 상 뒤도 다 빼비게 되니까 빼비게 인터스트로 참 지금이야 서원이 맞아봤다. 저 시계를 배우고 뒤도 잡아는 먹었어요. 서원이 맞아봤지. 여기 US. 이 경험소에는 뒤에 저같은 비디오 매년에 가운데 약을 내면 주시에는 딜마시네 나도 다다다 되지. 내는 거. I'm not sure. I am very lazy. Too much. 이제 시작을
the kind of the heart or the heart and source of Vajrasattva is the Guhyagarbha Tantra, the Guhyagarbha Tantra of the magical matrix. Or maybe we could translate that better and say the magical matrix of the secret essence. Guhyagarbha means secret essence. This is the source and the heart of Vajrasattva himself. What though do we mean by that? What does the Guhyagarbha, the magical matrix of Guhyagarbha actually mean? What's that about? Well, I did explain that briefly, not in any kind of detail, but briefly, when discussing, when giving teachings on the 9 jhanas, those 2 evenings of teachings. What I was talking about there was basically the content of the magical matrix of the Guhyagarbha Tantra. The whole content of the Guhyagarbha Tantra can be condensed into what we call the 11 principles of mantra. These are explained in Mipam Rinpoche's overview commentary and other commentaries. Because the Guhyagarbha Tantra is extremely vast and extensive, but all of the essential points can be condensed into the 11 principles of mantra. So it's good therefore to come to know what these 11 principles are. So what are they? First of all, they are the first of them is the view of the intrinsic nature. The second is samadhi, so unwavering samadhi. Third is the conduct to be kept. So these are the first 3. View, they essentially are referring to view, meditation, and conduct, right? I'll repeat them once more. So number 1 is the view of the intrinsic nature. 2 is unwavering samadhi. And 3 is the conduct to be kept. The fourth of these 11 principles is the mandala that is to be practiced. So in this case, and in the case of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, this refers to the mandala of Vajrasattva. What we mean by mandala is the central deity, in this case Vajrasattva, surrounded by his retinue in their entirety, and the whole dimension of the deity, Vajrasattva, his retinue, and so on. Mandala means round or circle. So one meaning of this word is sort of the main deity and their retinue, but in their entirety, so like full and complete, like a circle, with nothing missing. And that was the fourth. Now the fifth is empowerment, or we could say the successive stages of empowerment. So that's the fifth, the successive stages of empowerment. As explained yesterday, we need to receive empowerment if we want to enter into a mandala. The entryway or the gateway into Vajrayana and into the mandala is to receive empowerment. There are 4 different types of empowerment: the vase, secret, wisdom, knowledge, and precious word empowerment. Empowerment can also be divided up and described in many other ways, but this 4-fold categorization is a very common one. Some of you might think, for instance, there's a 25-fold division of empowerment and so on in the Guhyagarbha Tantra and its related texts. This is gone into in great detail. When I mention things like this, mention details like this, but then don't expand on them, some of you might think, oh, is Rinpoche just trying to prove to us that he's so learned? That's not what I'm trying to do. But at the same time, when mentioning these, when covering this subject matter, I feel like if I don't mention these points, then those of you who are more learned might think, well, maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about because he didn't mention so and so. So what to do? I mentioned these things, but we don't have time to go into them. There is also, in terms of empowerment, the Guhyagarbha Tantra also teaches the we could say the propelling empowerment, the secret empowerment, the like charging empowerment. Those are not very good translations, but yeah. Then we have the next point, which is the 6th, the samayas that should not be transgressed. This refers to keeping the various sacred commitments that we take when receiving empowerment. These involve pledging to engage continuously in the practice of the deity and so on. The most important samaya, however, is to the guru. This includes then also to keep one samaya with the guru, but also to, for instance, in the case of the Yidam deity, to never separate from the appearance of the Yidam deity, also to practice like the liturgy or ritual for that given deity on a daily or regular basis. As with these other points, there's a lot of detail taught in the tantras and their related texts. The Guhyagarbha Tantra enumerates 5 root samayas and 10 subsidiary samayas, making a total of 15. In short, samaya are our sacred commitments. We need to abide by them and not transgress them. We have the next point, which is the 7th, right? The 7th, the engaging in practice. This is the 7th, engaging in practice. This refers to different types of ritual practice to be engaged in, and for instance, the 4 stages of approach and accomplishment, close approach, accomplishment, and great accomplishment. It also includes the elaborate ritual practices of what we call drupje and drupchen, which are group practices done over the course of many days in a very specific way. The 8th principle is offerings. So the different types of offerings that are presented to the deity or deities. These include offerings that are peaceful by nature, such as the 7 offerings, the 7 sort of generic offerings of drinking water, rinsing water, and so on. There are also wrathful offerings that are comprised of different substances, like the 5 senses. This includes also the offerings of Amrita, Rakta, and Torma. We can also classify offerings in terms of, in the following 3-fold way: material offerings, imagined offerings, and emanated offerings. The next point is activities to be engaged in. So we need to practice, and part of the practice is to actually invoke and engage in activities to make things happen, basically. To use an example, for instance, if we go to meet an important person, important meaning they hold a certain kind of status and power, we might go to meet them and offer them food and chat them up and so on. At the end of the meal or what have you, we will make a request of them, right? Because we want to make something happen. Similarly, you might follow a teacher. You might attend to their needs by cooking them meals and taking care of them. At the end of offering service to the teacher, you will make a request of them, right? Oh, please, teacher, grant me some instructions or give me some advice. So in the same way, tantric practice involves invoking activities, peaceful, increasing, subjugating, and so on activities. The 10th point is mudra, that which binds. We can talk about 4 different types of mudra, or we could translate mudra into English as seal. We can talk about 4 different types of mudra, for instance, the mudra of enlightened body, the syllables, which are the mudra of enlightened speech, the insignia, which are the mudra of enlightened mind and activity, and so on. There are many other types of divisions. Finally, we have the 11th principle, which is mantra, that which is to be recited. We recite mantra, for instance, the 100 syllables of Vajrasattva, in order to invoke the deity, entreat their blessings, and so on. So these 11 principles of mantra are like the other crucial causes and conditions that need to be present in our practice, our tantric practice. If they are all present, then our practice is authentic, it's complete. They're a bit like ingredients in a meal, just to use an analogy. You might cook a very good meal, but if you're missing one ingredient, like salt, then the meal isn't going to taste so good, right? It's not going to be a success. In a sense, these 11 principles are a bit like ingredients. In short, what I'm saying is, what the teachings say is that all 11 principles need to be present in our practice. We can't, it's important that they're all present and not a single one is missing. And their presence, bringing all of these together, these causes and conditions together, automatically makes our practice authentic, effective, correct. How, now that I've said that, you might wonder, well, how do we apply these 11 principles? You know, like in practically speaking. Well, this you will come to see as we go through the liturgy. Like I said, I'm going to go through the different, not through the liturgy word by word, but through the different sections of the practice, and I will correlate those to these 11 principles of mantra, so you can see how all 11 principles can be actually performed by oneself, and also how they're present in any given sadhana. In the past, to be honest, when I was younger, I wasn't actually that interested in ritual practice. I was really interested in studying, and I was really interested in studying the scriptures, and I did do a lot of ritual practice. Daily practice, and also longer pujas and so on the special days. But I personally wasn't that enthusiastic about it. I kind of thought, studying the scriptures was kind of the more important and significant thing. Especially when we were studying, for me, the most kind of important and meaningful subject or scripture is the Guhyagarbha Tantra, the Tantra of the magical matrix. But I thought, with regard to that, the most meaningful thing to do is to really study the scriptures and to really delve deep into the various scriptures of that Tantra. But at some point, one of my teachers, Khenpo Daze Rinpoche, he gave some really, he said something which kind of changed my outlook. He didn't say this as part of like a formal teaching, but just as like advice and a shared reflection. He said, all of us, we've received many empowerments, including empowerment into the Guhyagarbha Tantra. And so we hold various commitments, Vajrayana commitments, which means that we need to practice in a certain way. We need to practice, basically. one way to maintain and uphold those commitments is to engage in correct ritual, perform the rituals properly, at the minimum once on the 10th day of the lunar month and once on the 25th day of the lunar month. And he said if we do that, if we practice rituals properly on those 2 days, then that's a way for us to really uphold our samayas purely. And then he said, well, you know, why is that the case? Well, that's the case because if you think about it, when you sit down and you perform a ritual, meaning like a sadhana or ritual liturgy from beginning to end, so beginning with refuge and bodhicitta and proceeding all the way through the different stages to the concluding dedication of merit and aspiration prayers. If you pay attention, you'll see that all 11 principles of mantra, which are actually the heart of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, all of them are present within any given ritual practice or any given sadhana. There's no need actually to look elsewhere or to feel like you have to do something else or look somewhere else for these 11 principles or for a way to keep your samaya. Just apply yourself to ritual practice properly and automatically you'll be engaged in those 11 principles of mantra and keeping your samayas, especially your samayas of the Guhyagarbha Tantra. That was really like a kind of light bulb moment for me when he said that, because before, like I said, I was really paying more attention and placing more importance in study of the Guhyagarbha scriptures compared to practicing. Of course, I did practice because, like in a group, for instance, we do practice in a group, and you have to go along. So it's not like I wasn't practicing. It's just my heart wasn't in it in the same way as it is now. When I say, or when Khenpo Daze Rinpoche said, perform a ritual, he of course means perform it really properly and correctly, not like we often, not like interrupted with chatting or drinking tea or getting distracted. Often when we do group practice, then it ends up a bit like that. That wouldn't qualify as like proper, the proper performance of a ritual, right? It means doing it really one-pointedly and authentically. If we do it like that, then yeah, just like I said, all of the 11 principles are complete, samaya also perfectly kept. Also, some people say that, I like practicing, but I really prefer just doing meditation in comparison to, as opposed to ritual practice. I guess by meditation they mean like silent meditation. But actually, once you come to understand what Khenpo Daze Rinpoche pointed out and what I just explained, how all 11 principles of mantra are present in any given ritual, any given sadhana, then you see actually ritual practice is meditation, and it is the best kind of meditation, the most profound, meaningful kind of meditation. So yeah, that was the 11 principles of mantra and how they're contained in ritual practice, ritual liturgies. In terms of which liturgy, because here I've referenced specifically the Guhyagarbha Tantra, right? And so in terms of liturgies, there are many different liturgies, both in the oral tradition, the Kama oral tradition, which many liturgies connected to the Guhyagarbha Tantra in the Kama tradition. Likewise in the Terama or treasure tradition, for instance, in the different cycles like Longchen Nyingtik and so on, you find many sadhanas that would be sadhanas for the magical matrix of the Guhyagarbha. It's important, all of you here are practitioners, right? You're engaged in practice and want to be properly engaged in practice. And as practitioners, it's important that we understand the vital points, but also that we know how to condense them and apply them, right? So one way to condense and apply these points is to engage in ritual practice in this way. That's so much.
Excellent.
So now I'm going to go through the liturgy. I'm going to start looking at the actual liturgy, and I'm going to point out and explain how each of these 11 principles of mantra are present in this specific liturgy.
yapay por sangue o tipo de sangue tem que vai a posição nem tá posição da pincha vai ter um negócio tá de anda lá então tá para de a Australia da se está tendo de que para matar nem mare e tá para bem tá onde vai gula que diga para nem essa tá para de para impressiva de tavares ele tá vai algo de como hatina na kinko ta shinda shaye ta kodam sum ba shinko ta shin na sa sa shaye ta sami na khamba se ni to chance to rang ge ha te tin ti ka na so ge ne shin se ta ma ne shasmo par ke vishin ta ne shaye ka se ta ma shaye ka ne ina ji na to la to ji san ye ha jete ne tela ne sa mari ma ji ge la ni en se anything in the day and the one, it's your body and the language. My wife and all that, and what you're good to me, and play in all the matter. One of the Jason comes in the sun, yellow road, two times in Japan, the hour of the Japan. I did not make you just say you had been that thing to the DJ, but I have some yet our line. Our head, our back, our lion, compal lain ko tan ta ta chu to to cha chi de ko ne lu sin chi ko ro ne ta wa kha na ya ne no ye ne ta ba ra cha ni pa ye ku ne ko chu chi ta pa ye ro chi ba ram ge na to de pa ye ba ha ko ta wa chi ti ma wa ne ni da ko ba chi ni ni chi pa ye ki cha ja ta ma la ko ta ma la to chi sa na ta cha ja ha ra ko ni mo mo ye chi ge de ta la ki cha ja cha ja che ba chi la ma ye 나와 고바 줘봐 아 야 줘봐 나 들어와서 다 줘봐 그냥 줘봐라 줘야다 뭐네 주식이 줘봐서 줘봐 공발라에 공백이 남바 뭐 이거 din이 숨는 거다 유이 din이 되는 kunna 되는 뭐지 그다음에 이와 시간에 뭐 약해로 유로서 뒤지 부시게 됐잖아요 나와야 되는 나세요 뭐 이게 이제 라터 줘봐 라이야 만약에 지세 줘봐라야 나서 숨쉬어가 멍쉬어가 뒤져봐 다른 줘봐 신세를 다 고백이 뭐 다 소바 소소를 다 이거 뭐 이거 야서 이 친구가 야가 시험 벌마제 밑에 아니 기능을 예수셔 무슨 긴거로 다들 긴거를 아주 싫어 던져 긴거를 하면 나도 거다 말하는 거 이거 나왔다 그러는 듯이 시바타 초기 하타 제타 기능 거로 저도 거다 그 류나게 셀로 이렇게 이게 tinki 거로 다들 먼저 보고 먹었어요 tinki 건다 옹스는 이요 옹스는 옹지 라미기 옹고 비죠 얘가 뭐 얘라는 디 옹스 가서는 유이 옹스 네 남도 옹스인데 바람속에 있는 남마게 있는 다 저쪽에 옹신의 이유가 되는 초가 담는 거 옹신의 이유가 써봤다 말아서 오늘 내가 옹신의 남도 옹스 그런 게 옹신의 이유 되네요 디인들 가만 다 옹는 게 디디 아니 그 저와서 가고 저랑 그 라이브 안 좋았다 일로 나와 구호하다 공항도 랑이랑 공항 일단 주죠 저 왕소 이 왕한테는 다 대야 되는 저가지 땅이 공항에 유럽 되게 왕이 선수 게 미사를 담았어 담들로 배미게 먹고요 담들 나서 먹고 요렇게 너나 방향 된다기 따왔더라 네 딜레마 해가지고 저번 거리 이슈부터 다니는 데가 연립이 따위기 된다 되는 담들 그냥 드리고요 된 돈도 이제 주바스 이게 파이기 시작한 차단제 살리나 되고 나도 주주 기본이 되게 시작한 차 때문에 지나치게 되고 어서 저도 소고기는 주바도 어서 저도 뭐 색깔로 가서 바로 최고라서 야를 주고 말을 하나 팀 말이 한 것을 말을 틀었더니 아semje 당적 딕슈다 아필라이나 세계에 와서는 연바니 주바 주신스 뭐 대표이 번지 주바스다 어야 주바자서 옛날 시대로 출발했어요. 그때 딱한 얘기가 있어서 출발하고 지주에 나죠. 상주에서 출발하고요. 에다라에 말로 돌비 출발하면 자기 대미 출발해요. 근데 저수에서 저기 출발해요. 나도 엔딩 할 때는 상임 상세 나는 그 출발해서 다 출발하고 이 동안 돌아가는 거 지주에 Maya Pila Sovata, Nila Chop Pila Sovata, I don't you make a Chababa. Anything taking what I the Chabatia some place. News of the Chibas, that's how it should. Then at the end of the thought of the Chimino and Jellish, Credo, Shalash, Shasido, and the Shalash, Credo, and the and then done get naked around you or canvas away in the Tulashi, Semishi, that nature by the nest of the Shabbat, up to the Cheva, a Cheva, either visual, a chocolate that took a lot of sound. So the meat is there, so before the cheek is a thermal around the big tendo, big tendo, the assembly. What is the Tanshi was the Jawa was what in the chocolate, chocolate, Nasandi, tomorrow, 7, 1,000, you purchase and you. And this is one to you, oh, yeah, and it I think you can then you got the Chile, Chile is the thing was Chile is the Chile was like that, I think what's in Palos. I check the same play numbers. Say, I'm checking the way I see it. So, you're just in the good check the 97 books to the check. I didn't go over. But good job using the just in the now the body and the other. Did it in check it. Then they were in the last. They were on by the side of my mother and mother side of the thing out like you know. It had to be so not out of the tower, not the young. They don't become the Baba, not like now, not say, not say, not like Tapa to the Tapa sheet. Then dinner like now and that on a Tuesday, they now they in the Deva Mongo that now they are minimum. Taina Toto, you should have given us a little better side of mother, Deva. Tati, you know, that show much you teach you to Tata Sound and Tata Sound. They sometimes they you know someone who said deep you know to something. You know to the sound of the chat. Make a watching something. The Sultan take it on that time to the heart. Everybody check at the Jane and not the town and the Haji Kona, one year in Gushi for the foundation. If they do that in my voice, they have a shout. They were the children. They are all the day should be Bassan and Chicken. He didn't know what you did. Chocachino, Tosism, Chocachino, sometimes get this.
So, okay, now let's go through these 11 principles of mantra again, but specifically in relation to this practice of Vajrasattva. So the first of the 11 principles is the view, right? The view of the intrinsic nature. So that this refers essentially, primarily, to understanding or having conviction in the inseparability of the truths of great purity and equality. The relative truth of great purity and the ultimate truth of great equality. So having an understanding and conviction in the truth of inseparable purity and equality, you understand that okay, now you have the conviction that everything I see, everything I experience right now is in reality the 5 female and male Buddhas. Everything without exception is right here and now the 5 male and female Buddhas. Everything in reality is the display, the play of boundless purity. In reality, things are not impure, not ordinary impure. For instance, this appearance of Australia, this is not real. In reality, this is a pure realm. A manifestation of inseparable purity and equality. Having this knowledge, knowing this, having confidence in this, is the view, the first principle. So, having this view, we should have this view, conjure this view when engaging in this practice. And if we do, we have the first of the 11 principles present, the view. Secondly, we have the principle of unwavering samadhi, which in terms of this, the practice of this sadhana, refers to the visualization, of the deity and the deity's palace, and also their pure realm. So the deity, meaning Vajrasattva and his consort, his retinue, the palace that he abides in, the immeasurable celestial palace that we visualize him in, as well as his pure realm, which is the realm of great delight. So visualizing all of these things is how we practice or implement the second principle of samadhi. The third principle is that of conduct, the conduct to be kept. We apply this principle when we understand that all of the movements we make during our practice, movements of our legs, of our arms, when we implement this when we see or perceive all of our movements as the movement of the deity. So when we see or perceive all of our movements of our hands, legs, and so on during practice as that of the deity, and never separate from that perception. That's in brief how we implement the first three principles of view, meditation, and conduct in this practice of Vajrasattva. As always, there's a lot more detail, a lot more we could say, and a lot more detail taught in the Guhyagarbha Tantra and its related texts. Just to say a few more things about conduct. Just to say a few more things about the view. Sorry. As I said, essentially the view here refers to having conviction or knowledge of the inseparability of great purity and equality. More specifically, though, that it refers to, with knowledge of the inseparability of purity and equality, having the confidence that I am Vajrasattva, I am the deity Vajrasattva. And not being separate from that. With the confidence that I am Vajrasattva, then actually visualizing oneself as Vajrasattva, visualizing the palace and so on visually, that is the implementation of the second point of samadhi or meditation. And then as we proceed through the sadhana, at certain points in the sadhana we make mudras, right? Certain gestures with our hands. Those and other gestures that we make pertain to the third point of conduct, the conduct to be kept. So that was a little more specifically about how those first three principles are practiced in this sadhana. Fourth is the principle of mandala. This refers externally to having the various offerings and tormas arranged on the shrine, just like we have here and like we had arranged more elaborately yesterday for the empowerment. Having these physical offerings arranged on the shrine is the external mandala. The real or essential mandala is actually to be visualized, to be seen and visualized in our body. In fact, the entire mandala is present within our body. All of the deities all of the deities without exception are present in our body. So visualizing that is the real mandala, this fourth point. Then we have the fifth point of empowerment. As I've said, there's many different ways to divide up and talk about empowerment. We can talk about simply speaking, a twofold division, two types of empowerment. The first being causal empowerment and the second being path empowerment. So the causal empowerment is the empowerment that is given to you by a teacher, like what I did last night. I bestowed on you empowerment, right? That's causal empowerment, the first type. Then we have path empowerment. So this refers to what the practitioner, how the practitioner continues to bestow empowerment upon themselves through practice. We do this. We see this process of self-initiation through visualizing the four empowerments in most sadhanas, right? Including in Ngondro, in Guru Yoga, you visualize that from the Guru's forehead, white light streams out, dissolves into you, bestowing the vase empowerment, and so on. All of that is describing the practice of path empowerment. So in this case then, we visualize at a given point in the practice, we visualize that from Vajrasattva's forehead, white light streams out and dissolves into the forehead of us, purifying the obscurations of our body, bestowing the vase empowerment, which ripens as a certain aspect of enlightenment, and so on. We visualize also other different colored lights coming out from the throat and the heart, and so on, bestowing the other empowerments. The sixth point, the samayas that should not be transgressed. The main central samaya is to remain within the view of inseparable purity and equality without being distracted, without wavering from that. So remaining in this view means from the very beginning of the practice all the way to the end. To remain in that view of inseparable purity and equality is to uphold our samayas. That's the sixth point. The seventh is engaging in practice, or rather practice that which is to be engaged in. So that refers essentially to the visualization of the deity with all of the specific attributes. So visualizing Vajrasattva with one face, with his two arms, and so on, and all the other attributes described in the sadhana. Visualizing light rays radiating out from his heart center, gathering back, and so on. So these different aspects of visualization are what the seventh point of practice refers to. And central to this is the visualization of light rays radiating out and gathering back. We visualize different colored lights, white, red, yellow, and so on, radiating out. First of all, they project out to all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, present them with offerings, pleasing offerings. Then they gather back and dissolve into us. They radiate out once more, striking all sentient beings of the six types, purifying their misdeeds and obscurations. And there are other stages of visualization where we visualize again the light rays radiating out and gathering back. These are described in what are called the 4 stages of approach and accomplishment, about which we could say a great deal more. Now we come to the 8th point, making pleasing offerings. We can talk about outer, inner, and secret offerings. We can categorize offerings in that way. The scriptures also describe the offering of union, the offering of liberation, the unsurpassable or inconceivable offering. During the practice, we engage in all of these different types of offerings. As we go through the ritual, we engage in these different types of offerings. We also, on the shrine, for instance, we present what are called the 7 general offerings of drinking water, rinsing water for the feet, flowers, incense, lamp, and so on. These are also offerings. Likewise, if we make any tormas and present those, if we make a tsok offering or feast offering, if we light candles or lamps, these all pertain to this 8th principle of making pleasing offerings. Similarly, there are different types of offerings, right? And these different offerings are directed towards different sense faculties or different aspects of the deity. For instance, the lamp is an offering made specifically to the deity's eye. Incense is presented specifically to the nose faculty. Clothes and garments to the body. Food to the mouth, and so on. When the liturgy might describe presenting like a display of music and dance, a performance of music and dance, that is said to be an offering to the mind of the deity. So with all of these different types of offerings, we're presenting, we're presenting, we're pleasing the deity by presenting these different things to the different aspects of their being. Of course, placing offerings, physical offerings on the shrine is important, but those actually function merely as a support for our visualization of further types of offerings. The real or kind of most important types of offerings are those that we visualize, imagine, emanate out, and the physical offerings we arrange on the shrine merely act as a support for that process. 9th point of activity. During the ritual practice, we invoke the 4 activities. The activities of pacifying, increasing, magnetizing, and subjugating. Why do we do this? We do this with certain ends in mind, certain goals in mind, essentially to accomplish the supreme and common siddhis, to accomplish enlightenment through the supreme siddhi, and then also to accomplish the common siddhis. With these 4 activities that we invoke, we might, for instance, try to cultivate good health, freedom from illness, freedom from famine and plague, and we would, on a higher level, invoke realization, request empowerment, and so on. So that's the 9th point of activity, invoking these various activities at different points in the liturgy. 10th point is mudra. Like I said earlier, there are many different types of mudra or seal. The main, most important, is the appearance of the deity. So to visualize oneself in the form of the deity, or to visualize the form of the deity in this context of Vajrasattva, and to maintain that visualization from the beginning of the practice all the way through to the end, is to implement this 10th principle of mudra. Then finally, 11th is the mantra to be recited. Essentially, this refers to the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva, which we recite verbally. We recite it purely and properly with correct pronunciation, and that's how we implement this 11th principle. There are actually many different types of recitation taught in the tantras, but we won't go into those details now. Simply speaking, by reciting the 100-syllable mantra verbally during this practice, then we're implementing that 11th and final principle. So in this way, you can see generally how these 11 principles, which, as I've said, they condense the heart of the entire Guhyagarbha Tantra, of the magical matrix, how all these 11 principles are present in this sadhana practice, and how thereby we can implement those ourselves. Once you have this knowledge, you have this knowledge that tantric practice involves this thing called the 11 principles, and then you have an understanding of how those 11 principles are present in any given ritual practice, including the specific one you're doing. Then you can really consciously implement them in your own practice, and then your practice becomes much more beneficial, incredibly beneficial and effective. Without this knowledge of the 11 principles and how to implement them in your practice, then of course engaging in practice, going through the sadhana is still very beneficial, but nothing like as meritorious and efficacious as doing it with that knowledge. That's what I'm saying. Nyepa. The more confidence, the greater your confidence in the inseparability of the truths of purity and equality, then the greater the blessings and power of one's practice will be. So it's important to have a degree of confidence or certainty in the view of inseparable purity and equality, and to apply that, to have that confidence when engaging in the ritual practice. First of all, one has a kind of a conceptual confidence, right? Like a conceptual understanding and conviction. This imbues one's practice with a degree of power, a degree of blessings. And then as you continue to practice, that conceptual conviction should develop into an experiential conviction. So it should deepen and grow into something, a conviction that comes from your own experience, that, actually, you have some direct taste of the inseparability of purity and equality, what that actually means. With that, your practice will become even more powerful and more blessed. And then as your experience grows into realization, upgrades into realization, then of course the blessings and power increase even more. So, to sum up what we've covered so far, to begin with, I gave a kind of general overview of sadhana practice and said a few things about sadhana practice in general, generation stage practice in general. Then I went through the 11 principles of mantra in general. And then I went through them again in relation generally to this specific sadhana, right? Gave you an overview of how the 11 principles are present in this specific practice. So now I will say a few things about generation stage, the practice of generation stage. When teaching the practice of generation stage, the scriptures talk about certain sets of qualities or different sort of frameworks that are implemented. One such set is purifying, perfecting, and ripening. So often the scriptures explain how the practice of generation stage purifies, perfects, and ripens in different ways. Similarly, the texts talk about pitching the framework of the 3 samadhis with generation stage practice and developing the qualities, this trio of qualities of vivid clarity, stable pride, and pure recollection. In particular, the Nyingma tradition in particular talks about the 4 nails that bind the life force. These are said to be kind of the vital points of generation stage practice. So this is what I'm going to talk about next. Nasim.
시비 때문에 방 배는 붙는데 이니까 배나 무슨 지고에네 어야 이빠지 그 파티기 지고요 나 대비되나 알아야 되는 양도 참여요 나 대비요 다 문제요 어쩔 줄도 되네 그냥 그냥 같이 말씀하자 아 어쩔 줄도요 다 문제요 나 대비요 당연 대비 예도 있다고 하지 내가 그냥 되게 지가 이 시력 선거 이 사고도 니기 저하시는 무릎 부지 공하는 게 후반 돈 낙습니다. 이 보디 되게 또 조금 세시죠. 아 소금 세시기 보다 술 주지 빠지는 거지 소금 세시기 남시에서 이제 아 이때 매기가 내가 제주도 제주도 집중 넘치 왜 제가 딱 필다 됐다 망치 딱도 참 제들이 죽지 못하는 제 네, 가서 조금 세시 계속 알때도 당시에 이제 일단 소금 세시 딱 배우시야 쳐가지고 당말 소금 세시 시에 이니까 소금 세시 저는 유지시에는 제가 땡기는 게 있어요. 사기 비비 나오거든. 여기서 다 그래주도 이제 또 바로 내가 그래서 그치 주는 거 같은데 이제 들었더니 제가 땡기는 게 있어요. 지금 대박난 게 있어요. 엄마가 써서 마스마에서도 아스미디 대박난 게 있어요. 얘네 쪽에 있는 거 얘기 때문에 그렇다. 나와 있고 막 이거 홍대인데 엄마가 써도 소리 많은 거에 맞아서 그냥 나가고 있지. 얘네 대박난 게 있어요. 제가 남들도 엄마가 써도 대박난. 얘네 대박난 게 있어요. 다들 나한테 한번 보시고 쉬운데 이게 나와서 이게 ini jawab lagi. Produksi lagi saya osan cuaca ya cuaca jawab sudah jawab macam sudah program kita senjata osan juga yang tak ada itu macam tinggi tu. Oh ya nak dapat di sana osan cuaca itu osan cuaca tinggi gitu. Tapi bomba mungkin bisa sana masa sana kita tanya dia dia kita kan nggak yang kita tahu kan awal yang bikin tanda tu jual nggak nasi ये एक तरह से ये इंसान की बात इब्बशी दानी जानी जो तो से दानी ये ताती ही कोई नहीं तो उसमें दावा है ना काम में क्या करें ताकि ये तो चल ये काम ये आज ये इन बात तो लेकर बात तो ये काम के बारे में नाराज हो सकते हो किसी को दिन छोटे से ये像学这个我呢他呀对的नाराज también también tiene que estaba en conjunto de chap es tinta uso la no se ya chap tiene que la se chica andaba chico con coche para mi se que para un poco no es una mitad mucho que nas chica ese yo para que están donde mi toma de la parte se vive bien por eso que quieren que están no que te va a traer una ya un no 기름 뭐가 나야 되네. 하고 이가 사와. 이빨은 미가 좋아. 수박은 떠들어 이거. 기름 찍고 제가 되고 있어. 기름 좋다. 그러나 이나 신체에 와서 저도 다 근데 근데 계속 준비를 했어. 그냥 많이 했어.
So these four nails that bind the life force. The word that's translated into English as life force, it also has the sense of root, the meaning of like being the root or the heart of something. But yeah, in English typically we translate it as life force. It also has that connotation, meaning like if someone is missing this, they're dead, you know. So these four principles that I will explain in a moment are described as the four nails that bind the life force. This is to say they are really like the heart, main points, as Rinpoche said in English, main points of the practice of deity and mantra. If someone is lacking, if a body is lacking a life force, then it's just a corpse, right? It's not able to function. It's not a live thing. So this is all to say that we need to have all of these 4 principles called the 4 nails that bind the life force when practicing deity and mantra. Why 4 nails? Well, imagine we have like a piece of wood. If you take a piece of wood but you nail it down into the ground just like on one corner or one side, it's not going to be stable, right? It's like going to kind of rise up off the ground on one side and be easily moved. Whereas if you nail the piece of wood down into the ground in all 4 corners, then it's going to be stable and unmovable, right? It's going to be fixed in place. So, yeah, we need to have these 4 nails. What are the 4 nails? Just to mention, first I'll just mention them by name. The first is the generated visualization. This refers to the visualization of the deity. Second is the recited mantra. Third is the activity of radiating out and gathering back. This refers to the visualizing light rays radiating out, gathering back, and performing activities. And fourth is the nail of unchanging realization, which refers to an understanding of reality, the boundless purity of all things. So our practice needs to be infused or imbued with all 4 of these principles. We need, when engaging in this specific practice of Vajrasattva, then we need to have a clear visualization of Vajrasattva, the deity, together with his retinue and palace and so on, right? This is what the first nail is referring to. Secondly, we need to engage in the mantra recitation, reciting the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva, which comes at a certain point in the practice. When reciting this mantra, we need to recite the mantra verbally, but we also need to accompany that with certain visualization. So visualizing that in Vajrasattva's heart center is a white Vajra, and in the central hub of that Vajra is his seed syllable Hung, encircled by the mantra garland of the 100 syllables. And we need to visualize all of that extremely clearly and correctly. Thirdly, when reciting the mantra, we need to visualize the different stages of light rays emanating out and gathering back. We need to visualize, first of all, light rays emanating out into all 10 directions and making pleasing offerings to the enlightened body, speech, and mind of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, all deities. Then we need to visualize these light rays being gathered back into Vajrasattva's heart, radiating together with bringing in all of the blessings and accomplishments. Then the light rays radiating out again, striking all sentient beings without exception, purifying their karma, obscurations and obstacles, establishing them in the state of Vajrasattva, and so on. And then we continue this process of light rays emanating out and gathering back to accomplish the 4 activities of pacifying, increasing, and so on. And fourthly, and so we do this in this specific sadhana. That's the 3rd nail. And then fourthly, we have the nail of unchanging realization, which refers essentially to a realization of boundless purity, meaning the inseparability of the truths of great purity and great equality, the conviction and realization that all phenomena comprised of the aggregates, illustrated by the 5 aggregates and the 5 elements, are the male and female Buddhas. That is their true nature. And this 4th nail of unchanging realization, conviction in the boundless purity of all things, this needs to be present from the very beginning to the very end of the practice. Other aspects of some of the other nails, like the nail of mantra recitation and emanating out and gathering back of light rays, are performed at a certain point in the practice, right? But this 4th nail of unchanging realization, this should be maintained from the very beginning to the very end without wavering. This is a very brief kind of summary of these 4 nails. They're taught extensively in many of the tantric scriptures. For instance, in Purba Bumnak di Sugi Sungin. this Sugisung,
그렇지.
which is a commentary on Prabha Bumnak by Guru Rinpoche. That's a very extensive commentary by Guru Rinpoche that teaches the 4 nails in great detail. They're also taught by, explained in a text by Pato Rinpoche. The text is entitled The 4 Nails That Bind the Life Force, and it is available in English. That text is of medium length, it's about 40 pages or so, and it contains a very comprehensive explanation that is rooted in the Tantras. To sum up, if we have, or to reiterate, if we have all of these 4, the principles of these 4 nails, then, and we apply them in our Vajrasattva practice, then our Vajrasattva practice will be authentic and very effective. To reiterate, this means, simply speaking, visualizing the deity Vajrasattva, reciting his mantra, visualizing light rays radiating out and gathering back, and then at the end of the sadhana, after the mantra recitation and after the mantra recitation, we dissolve the visualization, right? The visualization is dissolved into the intrinsic nature. The intrinsic nature being this, the inseparability of purity and equality. So there we have the 4th nail. But as I've said, this 4th nail actually needs to infuse all aspects of the practice. This is how we should practice for our practice to be authentic and genuine. For our Vajrasattva practice to be authentic and genuine. And we shouldn't, that said, we shouldn't, it's not enough just to engage in this Vajrasattva practice for say a month or several weeks and to accumulate say 100,000 of the mantra, recitations of the mantra. That is not enough to actually accomplish this practice, accomplish the generation stage of this practice. To do that, we need to apply ourselves to the practice from now until the rest of our life, for our whole life. That is what accomplishment takes. Applying oneself to practice for the duration, the whole stretch of one's life. To keep on practicing with these various qualities of visualization, mantra recitation, and so on, until the mandala of Vajrasattva actually manifests, actually dawns in our own experience and becomes our reality. It's not enough for this practice just to remain like a mental, as something that we imagine, something that we visualize mentally. We should pursue our practice until we actually experience it as reality. The generation stage texts explain that as your practice deepens and grows, your visualization will, at first it's just a visualization, like a mental visualization that is seen kind of in the mind's eye. But then it develops into something that you see actually with your physical eye. It actually becomes a visible object. The deities and mandala become a visible object, perceptible to your actual eye. And then if you continue to practice, then the deity will become so manifest that you can actually touch the deity, interact with the deity, speak to them in the same way that we speak to each other, the way that we see each other, interact with each other. And so on. So that is the degree, the level to which we need to commit ourselves to practice and apply ourselves with these 4 nails that bind the life force. That's our So we will pause here for our break and resume a little later on. When we come back, we will actually go through the sadhana page by page, and I will point out again each of these principles, the 11 principles and 4 nails and so on, and say, okay, you see, so this is applied here and this is applied there. What I've given you in this this session is kind of equivalent to a map. You know, I've explained kind of the content and all these crucial points, the 11 principles of mantra, the 4 nails that bind the life force, which really make up the deity practice. And when we come back, then we will, like I said, just go through the sadhana page by page, and you'll get an even clearer idea of, okay, this is exactly how these parts fit in to this specific practice. That's it. Now let's dedicate the merit.